just like that.
Is this better? You guys
It's
want
the
my
miracle.
floating head with the floating Tupac?
It's the miracle.
Yeah.
You're not a floating head. We can see your shirt.
It's a good looking shirt. Did you guys catch that Hawks game today?
Ugh.
I heard somebody said that the Hawks didn't show up.
No, well, I mean, it was good because they scored more than one goal, but I thought they played their best offensive hockey at the beginning of overtime, and then just a horrendous defensive series, coughing them or not getting to a puck in their own zone, and it's over like nothing.
I don't know a ton about hockey. More of a football, baseball guy, but it seems to me that last pass that Vegas scored on,
yeah,
should not have been able to thread two guys just perfectly like that.
I mean, usually when the puck goes into the corner in your defensive zone, you like to get that puck.
Yeah.
And then usually you've got at least one defenseman who's, back to defend that other wing. But I was texting with Dave Ulrich. You got the core of this Hawks team has so many miles on their legs. Like, how do you get excited for some fake playoff series knowing it's going to run into a regular season that's going to go into next June? Like, how do you tell Jonathan Toews, like, Johnny, we need you on your game for this thing? Or Corey Crawford, who I think has played terribly. Like, how do you get that guy jacked up? Okay, Max, we'll do hugs. How do you get that guy jacked up for – okay, kiss. How do you get Corey Crawford hyped up for a playoff series like this? I don't think you're gonna. So, whatever. Run into a regular season.
I think Crow does what Crow does, man, and I don't necessarily abide by him having COVID when this thing started.
Yeah, the problem with him is, in the old days he'd give up a soft goal per game, but you had an offense that would get you at least 3. Now he's giving up a soft goal or 2, and you've got a defense that is going to give up 1 or 2 more, and an offense that is lucky to get 3. Right? I mean, we're 6 full periods plus part of a playoff, one playoff overtime period into hockey, and the Hawks have not had a lead for even 30 seconds of hockey.
That Vegas team is they're pretty good, man.
Yeah, but I mean, this is why I don't understand. I mean, I know the NHL kind of manipulated this playoff to get the Hawks in there, but it's just a bad idea. I mean, sure, I watched, I guess, and they can sell my eyeballs, but it's just I hate everything about August hockey to start, and the only good thing about this game is it didn't start at 9:30 at night.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah.
That was absolutely brutal.
I'm all for more 4:30 hockey. That's a great idea, but whatever.
If Major League Baseball started a new team and they picked the second or third string guy off every team, that team would be unbeatable. Unbeatable.
What was that?
If Major League Baseball was going to start another team,
I feel like that's how a lot of –
and to populate that team, they said, okay, give us your third guy.
Ray, that's
give your second or third guy under every position. That team would rollerblade over the top of every team.
That's exactly how the Las Vegas Knights already won 1 Stanley Cup championship.
I didn't think they won one yet.
Didn't they win last year?
No, I thought that they came.
No, the Caps did. They got there.
Oh, you're right about that.
They
got
there the first season. They got there the first season.
But I mean, every sport has, like, they have an expansion, and then typically that one of those expansion teams takes it deep pretty quick. But whatever. I'm trying not to be bitter about it. I didn't expect much. I don't like this fake hockey playoffs. I think when you've got a team full of veterans like the Hawks do, it doesn't only hurt you during this playoffs, it's going to hurt you bleeding into next season, if there is a season.
Which will be abbreviated also.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the thing that you're looking at with college sports. That they're okay. It's I get why they're doing it. You precautions for the kids, but I think what nobody has thought about or what nobody's mentioning, because then that's the reason to bag it in the spring, is you're asking, hockey players to play one of the most grueling sports there is. And with, a 2-month layoff, you're asking 18 to 22-year-old kids to potentially play 20 college football games in a calendar year, and not even a calendar year, 40 some weeks.
Pat, are you talking about the end of the spring season into next fall?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been trying to like think through where these kids are. And first of all, I don't know how you get, I don't know. I mean, it's hard enough. I haven't played football forever. It's hard enough in early August to get kids, get a full team to go full boat, right? Knowing that the season doesn't start for a while. I can't imagine what it was taking to motivate an entire team this college preseason, knowing that your season might just get canceled. I mean, forget the fact that they were probably going to nix the first 4 weeks of the season anyways. You I don't know how do you get into a kid's head and get them to give you maximum effort anyways for that, right? But I think about this, like now you're going to be starting workouts later saying we're going to play you from February through April or whatever it is, and you're going to have like 2 months off, and then you're going right back. I mean, that's pretty brutal too for a sport that really needs a down season for kids to recuperate.
Well, and you're also looking at, if you're Trevor Lawrence, are you going to even touch a football in the spring?
Oh no, don't you think he's already cashing checks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he has been, but I mean,
I get it. They're doing it for the safety of the players is the thought process. But I mean, there's teams out there that, did a better bubble than the NHL is doing, than the NBA is doing. They had kids in one building. All they saw were kids on the team. They were tested all the time. And now you're just going to say, okay, Ohio State or, some of these Big Ten schools, now you're just going to throw them back in with 50,000 kids with no bubble and no.
You know what I love about this? Did you see who Sports Illustrated is pointing the finger at for this whole thing?
The MAC.
No, not just the MAC, buddy. I don't know if you know the backstory there. The MAC was ready to play. There was one school in the middle of a cornfield, Illinois, that said, we are not going to play, and if you guys try to play, we're going to boycott. At which point the MAC said, all right, we're not going to have a season. So if you go back and look, I mean, I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I did retweet it. Sports Illustrated wrote an article almost immediately about how the Big Ten, everybody was going to be forced to cancel because the MAC called their hand and basically said, we're doing this for safety. And the tweet was something like, when the entire college football series is canceled, you can blame a middling university in a no-name conference or something like that. And it was all about how
Middling?
NIU. What's that?
I said middling.
Yeah, that's what they called them. But it was all about how NIU kind of like forced this whole thing. And since the MAC and the Big Ten overlap geographically so close, it's really hard for the Big Ten when the MAC comes out. And I don't know if you saw both the NIU quarterback and the AD took a lot of shots at the big schools about, not caring about public player safety and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
In
they
fact,
clearly don't. I mean,
the NIU football coach even came out and said the kids want to transfer because they're worried. They don't like that we're worried about their safety. That tells you what kind of kids they are.
Well, I mean, there's a huge difference in what the Power Five has the financial resources to do for these kids and protect them and test them than a MAC school. I mean, NIU doesn't have the funds to house these kids in the home student center and shuttle them back and forth, and they do e-learning. And you're going to the practice field, you're going to the athletic center, and then you're going back there. They can't do that. A Big Ten school, an ACC school, an SEC school, Pac-12 school, Big 12, they can do that. The most cash-strapped school in any of those conferences has more than enough funds to take care of that. The MAC schools don't.
But I mean, this is something a conversation I've been having with people, and I know we're not on law right now. We can get there, but do you think Wake Forest wanted to do that? I mean, as an institution, Wake Forest, Northwestern, there's a lot of smaller schools and big conferences that play the games that have budgets, they don't want to spend money on that stuff. Northwestern doesn't want to do that. Wake Forest probably can't do it. But forget that. Like, you think Rutgers wants to pay that kind of money into their program? There's no way. Rutgers, maybe Purdue. I mean, like, obviously Ohio State's a well-oiled machine who's going to be like, whatever we got to do, money is not a problem. But even U of I, which is having all kinds of financial problems, I don't see U of I like wanting to do that. I see them going along with it if they're forced to. But
no, and I mean, I think that's where the presidents, you got the majority of the presidents saying no, but at the same time, they don't want to do that, but they are more than willing to take Michigan and Ohio State's money every year when they, I mean, that's part of what you got to do. You got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not some heartless bastard here saying, screw the kids. They should be playing college football. I just from, what I've seen as far as what the precautions that the bigger schools are taking, I think these kids are actually safer in the big conferences playing football than they are getting turned loose to house parties and dorm parties and everything else.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Like, Minnesota has that new like $300 million facility. I don't know if you've seen it. Like, it would be really a great place to sequester kids. But to bring it back to law, there is another problem there, which is if you're going to play football, Title IX is going to require you to play at least one women's sport, right? So now it's not just how do we take care of the football team? It's how do we, if you want to call it the cheerleading squad, the dance squad, the women's volleyball team, there's going to have to be a women's equivalent that plays if you want to avoid some pretty serious Title IX lawsuits. And it does get more complicated then because you've got to basically create two bubbles in teams that are basically overlapping use of weight rooms, film rooms, and all kinds of other stuff too. So I'm sure that's not a problem at Minnesota, Ohio State, Michigan, South Bend. But I mean, it is a little more complicated than just saying we're going to do this for the football team. I guess in theory, you could not worry about a small women's sport and try to add a spring women's sport. But, there is that extra legal issue there that nobody seems to be talking about in the football context.
Yeah, I you know what? I'll be honest with you. This may shock you. I was somewhat focused on football this fall.
Yeah. Nobody wants to, but like, and I'm sure some of the bigger schools might just say we're not going to do a women's sport, and if there's a Title IX issue, we'll pay it when it comes to court as it costs doing business. But Title IX has been so litigated, and is also a compliance issue with the NCAA. So, the NCAA could say, well, we're not going to sanction your football team because you're not doing a women's sport too. But anyhow.
And I honestly, I think, I don't know if this is going to cause the demise of the NCAA, but it sure as hell weakened them.
I don't know, man. Like, I hear people saying that, but I don't. It's, to me, the NCAA shown a huge lack of
leadership,
avoiding leadership through this whole thing.
I mean, you're the governing body. You're the hammer that comes down when things need to be adjudicated.
But the problem is that people who know sports know the NCAA doesn't do anything in conference play except provide referees basically and a rule book that they can choose to follow. Or if you want to talk about like the old Big East basketball conference, which chose not to follow the NCAA rules in some ways. Remember when they had 6 fouls in college hoops?
Yeah. Like
late 80s and the mid 90s, the Big East decided we're going to turn to the NBA and give guys 6 fouls. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a fan of the NCAA to start, but
I mean, I just think this was a perfect chance for them to say, hey, we're going to take the bull by the horns and we're going to either allow, we're going to say, we're going to go forward. Here are the guidelines. If you can comply with the guidelines, this is what you need to do. If you don't have the resources to do it, back out. But just to let the Big 12 and the ACC and the SEC say, well, we're going to play, we're not. I mean, what are they, other than getting a huge fat payday for March Madness in administering, rules saying these kids can make money. Oh, they can't make money. Oh, the states are going to go ahead and let them make money. Okay, well, we'll let you go ahead and make money. They're just
Don't you think that the NCAA is a little bit kind of, they lost that lawsuit regarding the bowl games where the bowl games are technically owned by the conferences, and that's where a huge pot of the money comes from. Don't you think? To the NCAA is kind of like, you guys wanted this mess. It's your mess to deal with.
And that's fine. But then what I think they're doing is saying, we're becoming less and less of a leader and, more and more of just a facilitator.
Yeah, that's definitely true, especially when it comes to football.
They're becoming these tournament directors that drive me up a freaking wall every summer for baseball. I mean, that's what they're becoming. They're becoming tournament directors who are going to do the absolute bare minimum to get their paychecks. That's what the NCAA is becoming.
And tell the students, by the way, that they can't cash checks of their own if they have any say in it. Right? Yeah. That's why we can move on to racing, but that's what I always hate about the NBA. It was dudes in suits in Indianapolis telling kids who are bleeding on a court that they can't get a free meal from a booster. Right? Like their paycheck cashes every time they go to the bank, but they're telling Ed O'Banion and these guys on the court, like, oh, you guys can't make money at this sport. Like, that's just our money.
Yeah. I was never super down on the NCAA, but the last couple of years, and I mean, part of it is because I know kids that are getting into that level that are playing college sports, and my kids are playing, D3 and JUCO sports, and I just see just a complete lack of leadership. But
gentlemen,
Zoom bombing.
There was a bombing, gentlemen.
Ray, how sympathetic were you for the IT director at Lake County when this happened? I got to think you felt his pain, buddy. I got to think you felt it.
It was like it could happen to literally anybody.
It has.
It has. So 6 accounts at a time in a single room, impersonating judges and others. A lot of disruption. I've had Zoom court over at Lake County.
Well, my understanding was there was some threat.
And the Zoom court started at 9 o'clock, and I got heard on both of them. One was at 10:40, and the other one was at 11:40.
Wow. I did Zoom court today in Kane County. I logged on at 9:15, and I was done at 9:20. It was awesome. And I did it from the Woodstock Courthouse because I was in the middle of court there.
Well, they said that they're not going to be broadcasting them on YouTube.
So are they going to be in courtrooms that are otherwise open to the public? Because I think there's something written on a document somewhere about that.
Well,
So
I think
we do have a set of rules. They're written down somewhere, and that having a public courtroom is part of those rules.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody knows where that document is anymore. It seems to be followed less and less.
I think what Ray,
they didn't protect it.
Ray, that rule you're talking about is called a technicality.
Nicolas Cage has it somewhere.
And I've thought about this. There's a whole, I don't know if you guys have been in the courtrooms where the judge starts to do something with somebody on Zoom and nobody can see the person and nobody can hear the person and nobody really knows what's going on except they hear the judge's side of the conversation. If that's not broadcast on YouTube, I think there also could be a constitutional issue there and that it's not technically a public proceeding.
Well, a little bird.
Are all of these people signing something, waiving the right to appear on a public forum while being through video?
Yeah, I'll sign that right away. Sure.
Wait, what was the question?
Are all of the participants, all of them, the 50 or 75 people, have they signed a document that allows their interactions with the judge to go out over the ether?
They don't have to.
Why not?
There's nothing preventing, other than a silly Supreme Court rule that is archaic and doesn't jive with almost every other state in the country. There's nothing preventing the Supreme Court from mandating it be broadcast on YouTube.
Don't we have a rule about recording in Illinois?
We have a Supreme Court rule. We have an
eavesdropping law.
Which, by the way, if you look, I think they stopped YouTubing Chicago Bond Court because people were taking those recordings and putting it on Reddit because it was so insane.
Well, so, that and there were guys talking about how they were trying to work off their pinch
right
in Bond Court, and guys were saying, "Oh, Go ahead. Really? Go on. More. Tell me more. One of the things that Lake County, I was told, that Lake County is trying to do is to check with our favorite legal minds at this U.S. Supreme or Illinois Supreme Court to say, if we choose not to broadcast it and make it a public proceeding, and we just leave the Zoom channel open to the other lawyers that are on there, will that qualify as the requirement in that document that wherever that is?
Hang on.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I bet it's the same one I had. Go ahead.
Now, I know none of those people at the Supreme Court ever walked a mile in our shoes.
No.
So before they got to those people, surely they went to defense attorneys and said, if you had an objection to this, what would it sound like, right?
That was not part of the information I received today, but I can't imagine anybody is going to go to a statewide policy-making body and not get the input from one of the most crucial players in that proceeding.
It would be the first time ever. First time ever, right?
Can't fathom that they would do that. That's insane.
You know what? We're so used to them coming to us saying, how do you guys think about this? That it probably just slipped our mind that it occurred to nobody that they wouldn't do that in this case. Right?
If they spontaneously asked me, I would be tongue-tied. I wouldn't know what to say because the shock of somebody asking for a defense attorney's input would just be too much. My head would explode.
I love this. They're going to get some half-baked opinion from the Supreme Court, and then one of us is going to come up with an argument they didn't expect. And then when it goes to the Supreme Court on an argument they didn't talk to Lake County about, they're going to have to back it in somehow through some twisted logic to not double cross the people they said was okay, right? Isn't that exactly what's coming?
Zoom bombing takes, that's a more, not to have your proceeding Zoom bombed is much more of a crucial issue than having your proceeding held in a public forum. That would be their logic. Like they haven't used that before, huh?
Pat has always asked for our legislature to come to the rescue during this terrible COVID period.
Oh, right.
So
and
now,
then this dumb law. And then this
Jesus
terrible
Christ.
law.
So
Careful
now,
what you wish for,
now,
Walsh.
now they've given Pat exactly what he wants. Here you
Pat,
go.
tell the tens of listeners at home why this is a dumb law that changes nothing, please.
Just a little backstory there. What I've been preaching is I don't necessarily have a problem with the recommendations and what they're asking us to do, but there are ways they could have gotten it done. And we talked about when the health department was asked to turn over every positive COVID result and essentially everybody's private medical records. They could have done. They could have had the masks in the social or the shutdown restrictions. They could have done that had they actually asked to have a quarantine declared. It could have been reviewed by a court, and then it would have had the force of law. Or they could have passed a statute that said during times of a pandemic, and the pandemic will be declared as, laid out how a pandemic would be declared and by whom and everything else. There would have been a statute. They didn't do that. They just instead had the, Emperor Flintstone get up there and say, this is what we're doing. And when I say this is what we're doing, I mean, this is what I want you to do. This isn't what my family and I are going to do because we're the Flintstones. We're a modern Stone Age family. We're going to Florida and Wisconsin and we're going to do whatever we want to do. He never passed a law. He just got up there and said, this is what we're going to do. So now the first statute that we have regarding masks and restrictions isn't to tell people this is what we need you to do for public safety purposes. This isn't what we need you to do to stem the tide of this pandemic. This isn't what we need to do to get out of it. They create another felony crime for the Karens out there who don't want to wear a mask in Walmart or Target or whatever. If they assault or touch, isn't it? It's assault or a battery, right?
This is written, this is an extension of the aggravated battery.
All right, so it's just a battery. If Karen touches the Walmart worker who's escorting her out of there, Walmart and Target and Costco and any retail worker who's enforcing this now has the same protections against being touched as a felony, as a police officer or a first responder or a jail guard or somebody in a hospital. So all he did, instead of enforcing the mask rule, codifying it, putting it in statutory form, he just added another felony that people can get charged with.
This
And
is
Go ahead, Ray.
super frustrating to those of us who practice in the criminal law. We have this statute that starts at a class 4 felony, and then depending on the circumstances can go all the way up to a class 2. But the idea is that they have this aggravated battery, and then they add paragraphs under it. So it's aggravated if the person's greatly harmed. Well, that makes sense. It's aggravated if the person that is touched is a police officer. It's aggravated if 3 or more people try to do the action. So we get this laundry list of things that are called aggravated battery. And now we can add barking back at somebody who tells you to put your mask on, which
So
I disagree with Pat. I think that we should send a thank you card to the legislature. Maybe we should share in some of the fees that they will generate with writing stupid laws, because all it does is it's like the lawyer employment bill. It just adds to the things a lawyer has to do.
From a purely selfish standpoint, yes, this is a good law. But instead of, what he did is he is now somebody can get charged for resisting the enforcement of something that doesn't have the force of law.
I have a couple of questions.
Look at that asshole.
They're mostly
Sorry,
Pat.
sorry.
That's a mask I need right there, guys. I need that mask.
First question is kind of rhetorical, and that's
Where do I
this.
get the state of Illinois mask?
Pat,
Yes, sir.
do you think that this law was proposed years ago and just got passed because the legislature moved so slow? Or do you think all of a sudden they learned how to pass laws again? Because you've been saying for months, where are these people? And I'm guessing from somebody coming up with this idea to this idea getting passed was like within 2 weeks. Number two, do you guys find it ironic that Ray, can I share the screen really quick?
Yes, go right ahead.
Let's see. Are you guys as amused as I? First of all, by the way, there's a possible issue that this stuff could already be a felony based on where it happens in our statute. But how about right here, where a battery is already aggravated if a person, I don't know what's doing that. If a person is wearing,
oh, this is so interesting. Yeah.
If a person is wearing, look at this. If a person is wearing a mask when they commit a battery, it's a felony. So like we could have this awesome situation where somehow a person who is masked touches a person who's involved in kicking out somebody who's not wearing a mask, and we can have a masked person committing a double aggravated battery.
Well, I think
based on masks.
Yeah, but the problem is that, and I mean, I would argue that here it's where a mask is used to conceal your identity, and a person who's wearing a mask to not transmit or get COVID is not wearing one to conceal their identity.
So you're saying you have to prove the intent of the mask wearer.
Well, it seems to suggest that.
And I have another question, which is how many masks will be worn as a result of this new law because it's a felony, as opposed to if it was just a misdemeanor, which, by the way, it already was, right? All this does is take what would be a misdemeanor battery and make it a felony if it involves somebody trying to enforce a mask rule, which Pat correctly points out is not a law. So do you guys think something that was already a misdemeanor now being a felony is going to reduce the chances of it happening out there in the real world?
No, and 100% no. And you don't need this, because if Karen touches the guy trying to throw her out of Costco, it's a felony if they want it to be. It's a public
And
way.
it's always a battery and it's always an assault.
Yeah, it's a public way. This did nothing.
The other thing that, and this is the other thing that our lawmakers don't get, they have put a felony on this to sort of put some oomph into it. Okay. But if we were to take Karens and survey them, going to jail for a day would really, really ruin their whole vibe. They would be shocked and surprised if they were going to go to jail for a day. So as a result, they are underlining it with a broad Sharpie when it doesn't need to be underlined with a broad Sharpie. Hey, if you battered a person, you could go to jail for up to a year. Karen would go apoplectic if you threatened to throw her in jail for a year. Okay.
When I listen to you and Pat talk about this, it not quite. It almost sounds like you guys are describing a law that was passed purely for like public relations and political reasons.
This is the Twitter clause to the Ag Bat statute.
What's that?
This law, this provision in the aggravated battery statute was driven by Karen fighting on Twitter.
It's just so ridiculous. I mean, clearly it's done so we can pretend to be hard asses against or solidify how serious we are about the masks. But, you know, the legislature, like you point out, Pat, just had the opportunity to pass real laws that could have, like, for instance, explain the guy only has these emergency powers for 30 days and we're 180 days later, right? And he's still got emergency powers. So, like, they have the chance to pass all that. And these morons get together and this is what we get. That's it. I mean, the reality is that legally this is a mess. It's been a mess since day one and they don't give a damn. And we're going to go through all this again. And all the law we're going to be left with is law of the courts, judge-made law for real, right? We're going to be stuck with whatever rules come out of the bad litigation that comes out of this. And those are going to be the rules of the game. And they're not going to do anything about them unless they don't like how those rules go.
We need a car. We need a car. We need a car. We need a car. Oh, here's a bookcase.
How did you CGI that baby in on your shoulder?
That's Tupac. It's a ghost of Tupac.
Oh, okay.
Maxo, what's up, buddy?
You see, can you say hi, Max?
Hey, bud.
Hi.
What's going on, big man?
Well, it's, you know, it's 9 o'clock. Why wouldn't he be awake?
Max, when I find the bluegills on the Fox River, kid, we're getting out there.
Yeah. They're under the docks, Pat, if it's that busy.
It's just hard to get up to the docks when you got Hell's Angels jet ski division flying.
Is that it? Is that really, you can't get near the docks because it's that crowded?
It was the few times we tried to get up there, it got a little bouncy.
I hate that, man.
Well, summer's boating season, and I'll fish in spring and fall.
But I don't know when schools are going back up there. You literally have what, like a week and a half of it left. So
yeah, I think the weekends we need a couple of 55-degree weekends, and
yeah,
it'll be good. What
else you got, Ray?
Well, I had a thing that I was researching as far as I really wanted to spend some time and figure out which courtrooms were going and which ones weren't.
Ray is doing a deep dive on this. How could Zoom let somebody down thing? I love it, Ray. Now Ray's interested.
Well, no, but the thing that is difficult for me to understand is if I'm in a McHenry County court, the judge is telling me, hey, Ray, we're going to have a jury trial on October 15th. When I'm in Lake County court, the judge is going, you are obviously having a psychotic break if you think we're going to do a jury trial anytime this year or the first half of next year. That's just not going to happen. They're like, we don't even care what you have to say about it. So I'm wondering, Lake County, McHenry County used to be the same circuit. How did we get that difference between Lake County and McHenry County? Now, Kane County has regular courtrooms open now?
So Kane County has no judges in Kane County more than 3 days a week. Every courtroom except the branch courtrooms is doing Zoom when the judge isn't there. And even in Zoom, some of the judges are going to the courthouse, but many of them are doing it, with a fake background. Kane County is also doing juries, but they're doing basically in custody on speedy trial demand. Like they're rank ordering them in a way where I set a domestic a month ago and the judge looked at me and he said, I'm going to give you like an October date, but you're going to be like number 300 on this list. Just understand that. If you want to be higher, I'll go up farther out. And I was like, no. I have a couple of cases elsewhere. I'm going to set another one in DeKalb next week. They're being a little more cautious as well. By the way, all of these counties are taking.
What kind of data are they going to give you in DeKalb?
I'll tell you next week, I think. I'm going to guess. I wouldn't be surprised if DeKalb puts me into the early next year.
I'm gonna have 4 of them go in September, I've been told.
Yeah, I've got an October or early October that's definitely going to go. I've got a late August that is August 31 that's going to go if an attempt murder doesn't go. So I don't know anybody who's gone through one of these jury trials yet and said this is a really good experience. This has been great. It's good for the jurors. It's good for the witnesses. I don't know anybody who's said that yet. So I don't, I'm just here to cause problems and appeal stuff, but I don't know anybody who's.
Does a juror have a cause of action if they catch COVID during the trial?
So let me tell you, I don't know about that.
We'll be leading the charge on that as well, Ray.
I don't like how could they not at least file something if they're technically compelled by law to be there, right? Also, they have a right to be a juror, which I would imagine involves the right to do it in a safe environment. And they catch COVID. What are you looking at me like that for? Wasn't it the whole point of Batson?
Oh, no. I think that, like, I can remember the speech cases that said that speech was a right to engage in speech, and also speech was a right to not engage in speech. I mean, you can't be forced to, part of the what that law covers is that it's really the right to communicate or not communicate, and by not communicating that thought.
Well, I gave you that look because clearly the right to be safe has that's not in the court administrator's thought process.
Pat, I don't want to have direct comparisons. Other places, I feel way more safe. There are places that are doing legitimate contract tracing. You walk into a courtroom, you're going to sign a book that says, I was here on this day. So if somebody calls them and says, I got COVID at the courthouse, they have a list of people they can call and say, here you go. You walk into the law library and you fill your name out and you flip it over. Nobody sees it. You fill your name out. You tell them you were there on this day, generally in the afternoon. It goes in a bin. So if somebody calls back and says, I got it and I was at the law library, they can call me. Sycamore has invested a ton of money in like plastic partitions. So where, for example, McHenry County has just taken the tack that attorneys shouldn't be able to sit at tables anymore and talk to clients, and they're kind of herding people into the few areas that are safe to talk to people. Sycamore has actually put a lot more tables outside, and they've put these giant 8-foot partitions up for some privacy, where they have tables with a chair on each side with a plastic partition between that you can pass documents.
We have
so
one.
Even as you, what's that?
We have one.
Yeah, we're right. So Sycamore actually bought a bunch of that stuff. And then you go into the courtrooms and like there are plastic partitions at counsel tables that keep the podium separate. So I mean, we said this early on, like for whatever reason, McHenry County seems to just act like this is a temporary thing. We're going to move on. There are other counties that put a ton of money into infrastructure and technology updates to say, if we have to do this for 24 more months or forever, or if it pops up again, we can do it without skipping a beat. And as an attorney, I feel much safer at these places that are taking this a little more serious, and knowing like we talked earlier, like if one of us gets it at Woodstock, it's just like we're all going to have to quarantine, right? Because we're all jammed up in the same spots, and nobody knows where anybody's going to get anything.
Yeah, if one of us caught it Monday, all 3 of us would have to quarantine. I talked to Ray. I talked to you. I've talked to you guys in the courthouse. I think it was this morning or yesterday, man. I was sitting, 1.5 feet away from you in 104.
Right.
So
Right. And that's another thing where quite frankly at Woodstock they didn't care.
no,
You know, other places have tape spots on the ground and a defense podium and a prosecutor podium and partitions and
Yeah, they are just trying to be forward thinking.
Ray, I walked into something I'll tell you guys about later. I walked into a mess yesterday, okay? Just a mess of a hearing, which of course I walked into because I was trying to get involved in. Let's be honest. And I walked in with another attorney, and the judge says to the bailiff, "You got to keep count of how many people are in here." And the bailiff says, "Two of you state's attorneys sitting in here got to leave because these guys walked in," and made them get out. So there's a measure of policing going on in other places, like not just policing, but calculation of how many people can be in a space. And they're serious about it, but they're also taking great lengths to not overcrowd it by letting too many people in to start because they're not having regular court calls. I mean, when they asked me this morning on Zoom, do you want to go to a Zoom date or do you want to personally appear? I'm like, give me a Zoom date.
you know that there was a positive test in the McHenry County Clerk's office, right?
And there was also one in McHenry County Jail.
Yes. No, there's 3 or 4 in McHenry County Jail if you count the detainees, the ICE guys.
Yeah, which I'm sure the sheriff doesn't, right?
And
They're on a different floor, Matt. It's a different floor.
Different HVAC system, all kinds of different stuff.
They're federal detainees. They don't.
It's not like the ventilation for each floor is carefully hermetically sealed so that the air doesn't go throughout the building.
It's they're federal
You would know
detainees
if-
with federal health problems.
If you spent more time at the jail, you would know that.
Yeah, and I've seen.
By the way, I just made all that up.
There's two clerks that show up in court and they don't wear masks.
I saw that once. I saw one of those. I was a little weirded out by it. And then I saw one judge that didn't wear a mask.
I'm okay. Look,
There's two on the 3rd floor.
Okay.
the clerks are behind their plastic, and if they don't want to wear a mask, fine. It's crazy that they're all on top of each other back in their office. What's that?
They're sitting next to another clerk. That's the problem.
I know, and they're going back to their office and are not wearing them too.
All right, guys. Neil tested negative. All right, Neil, you can stay on. Thank God. Neil tested negative on Tuesday. He can continue to watch.
Oh,
Get worried.
Ray, you doesn't have to put his bandana up. I don't want to get too far off of COVID. Are we going to talk about some other stuff? Because I heard there was some political stuff.
Political stuff?
Well, I heard that our most likely potential future president picked a former prosecutor as his running mate. I don't know if you guys heard that.
Trump picked a prosecutor?
No, yeah. I love the fact that Ray's playing both sides of this. Ray is on the YouTube constantly saying Trump, but I know Ray has got $100 bet out there with another attorney that it's not Trump. So
it's not a bet. It's not a bet. It's a thing that he will pay me in about 2 months. I will just get paid.
It was Ray. It was not a bet. It was not a bet. It was a game of chance, right?
There's no chance.
It was like a lottery. It's more like a lottery. It's more like a lottery.
Like a lottery ticket that will pay off.
It's well, at one point she absolutely hammered people. A lot of which are in her target demographic for
Matt, we're not supposed to talk about that. She talks now like she won't do that anymore.
But she was listening to Snoop Dogg in the early 80s and smoking pot in her dorm room. Oh, wait, yeah, that's right. He wasn't around then.
Yeah, though I caught a little part of Hannity describing Harris as being the far left pick. And then I thought to myself, is Hannity a drug user? Because that guy's high. That's like, no, state's attorneys are not the left part of any political spectrum.
Not just a state's attorney, Ray, somebody who was a pretty across the board law and order, no breaks, don't let anybody out, object to every post-conviction petition, don't let them DNA test on old cases. Like she wasn't just like a reasonable prosecutor. She was a hell hath no fury prosecutor. She was a scorched earth prosecutor, at least in her office like that. I love the fact that there's people rioting now over how police are choosing people, right? And then here we go. here we go. We're just picking another one of these people and putting them back in control. And there's people who are buying this act like, well, it's going to be different now, right?
Well,
and you know,
Later.
you take it with a grain of salt. But I saw her giving a speech. I don't know when the speech was. Essentially, the gist of the speech were 18 to 24-year-olds are stupid. They're dumb. They have no idea what's going on. That's why we put them in dorms with RAs, because they're not capable of making their own decisions. And I'm thinking to myself, did you ever for a second think of running for federal office? Because that's who you need right now.
I've been asked about it by a couple people, and it's like, so many people are we are where we are because people just don't care what decision somebody made a week or a month or a year ago. They care what a person standing in front of them is going to say. And if that person chooses to lie to them, people buy into that. And I love that for 4 years almost, we've had Democrats saying Trump is terrible. He's a liar. And now it's like, well, Harris is going to get a free pass. And if you say that, people are like, well, yeah, she's not, her positions or Biden's positions or her lies aren't as bad as Trump's lies. And it's kind of like, maybe that's a game we shouldn't just play. Like, don't we have the ability to put, like, Tammy Duckworth wouldn't have that issue, right? Tammy Duckworth would have some other issues, but she just seems like probably the most law and order federal person out there right now, except for Jeff Sessions, based on her record. And she's going to get dropped into a White House at a time when people are literally burning the streets and taking over chunks of urban centers because they don't like the way police are acting. And you've got somebody who has been a police apologist her entire career. It's amazing for me to watch how dysfunctional our political decision-making is. And it's humorous to me. Absolutely humorous.
I jinxed it last year when I said, or not last year, but last election in 2016. I said, this is the worst set of choices I will ever have in a political election. And I was wrong.
The other thing that people keep forgetting is that Biden was a credit card shill. That's all he ever was. He's the guy who the credit cards charge you 25% interest. That's fine. They charge you late fees. That's fine. The entire credit card industry originates out of Delaware, and our good senator from Delaware is Joe Biden. I mean, you talk about having a president sponsored by MBNA. That's Biden. So you talk about great choices. We have Biden, who's going to either die or bore us to death.
Or just forget where the hell he is.
We have Kamala Harris, a prosecutor in office, which that's always a nice thing. We mostly get our prosecutors on the bench, so we're used to that.
Just a different wing of government.
Just a different wing of government. And the problem is that on the other side, we have our next president, Donald Trump, followed by Michael, whatever his middle initial, Pence is. I mean, it's like this. You're like, is this some sort of weird joke that somebody's telling?
If I'm Pence, I don't give them the satisfaction of debating her until Biden debates Trump. That is going to be awesome. I'm DVRing that because I'm going to watch that for years. It's going to be awkward.
Harris against Pence is going to be fun to watch.
I think if you ask the average person right now, they think that Harris is going to mop up on Pence
I do.
But Ray, I think she's going to present really well. She's going to say all the right things. And when it comes to the fact checking, or when it comes to somebody saying, did she walk the walk she just talked, she's going to have problems. But my bigger point is that really is not in the election equation, right? And
that's not how you win an election, and that's not how you win a debate.
Yeah, but who's going to fact check her? You're a racist or a misogynist if you fact check her?
I don't think she's going to get fact checked so much as she's going to say, when I'm vice president or when I was in the Senate, I voted for A. And the reality is she's going to have voted for A because she knew it was a losing thing, or she can say what she's going to do in the future. But when you look at what she actually did, you're going to find that there's 20 years of going exactly against the policy she claims she's going to vote for now. And nobody is going to give a damn about it. It's like, this is such a, like, from a criminal justice standpoint, she's like middle right? Probably more than middle even. It's not even close. And people just don't care, even though that's a big issue finally.
In answer to Neil's question, yes, CNN will just thoroughly comb all of her statements to fact check to make sure for the veracity of them.
CNN has already fact checked.
That's what journalism is all about.
CNN has already fact checked her statements, and they all check out. Okay.
Preemptively.
Yeah, they
preemptively checked. She gave him a script. They okayed it. They're going to endorse it, and I think they're going to like what she has to say. I think
we expect her to say this, and she's right when she says it.
Yeah, I don't want to see a vice presidential debate until I see the big two debate, and that's just going to be
that's just going to be two old guys spitting at each other, isn't it?
It's going to be awesome.
I don't know if I mean I don't know if Biden's even going to want to debate him, because Biden seems to be
losing marbles.
I would, if I were Biden, that we would have that many debates.
Sure.
Because there's not, listen, if I were Biden, I'd be like this: the election is over. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
If you're Biden, you've got an easy out.
I'm going to stay safe.
If you're Biden, you're like, this guy has been going to factories and not wearing a mask for 6 months. I'm not getting on a stage with him, right? That's your easy out.
You could even do less than that. I'm not going to get on a stage with a guy who's just gonna tell lies and say whatever he wants to say. That's zero. That's a zero. There's no reason for me to do that. We all know he's a lying liarton. I'm not doing it.
So Ray, I got one other thing I want to talk to you about, but I don't want to skip any of your tabs. So if you want to go get back to your tabs.
No. Go right ahead.
Well, I feel like I'm the last person in the world to see the George Floyd video. Did you guys see it?
I didn't see the new one, no. Are you really off Twitter for good?
I changed my password. I'm out of Twitter. Like I'm less anxious. I've done this before. I'm off. I'll probably go back on. But I changed my password to something I know, so I can't log in. And I'm finding, like, through the repetition, I actually would look at Twitter a lot more than I thought I did. So
I did not see the
I want you to come back to Facebook.
I did not see the opening portion of the George Floyd video. I've started to watch it a couple times, and then 50,000 pop-up ads are getting in the way.
No, so like the video starts with the cop going into the little store and the clerk saying, "Here's a fake $20 bill." He just kind of flashes it, and then the cop runs right out, and the guy's like, he's out there in that gray Ford or whatever it is. And then the cop goes out there, kind of does that creep up from the back thing, knocks on the door, hey, put the window down. And then, like, within 7 or 8 seconds of him making contact, the gun is right in George Floyd's face. Did you see it, Ray, or no?
I did not see that part, no.
Oh.
Isn't there a part where they take him and sit him against the wall?
That's later.
That was on the original one.
Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find it. But what's crazy to me about it, and I don't know if it's the full story or whatever, is that how there is zero corroboration that this bill is a fake bill. Number one, the clerk just holds it up. It's like, here's the fake bill. The guy's out there. There's zero corroboration that that's a fake bill. There's zero corroboration that the guy whose window they're knocking on is the one who actually passed a fake bill. And then I have been like, I've been pulled over before. I've never had a gun stuck in my face, like not a single time. And then Floyd, Floyd seems to be maybe almost exhibiting like some PTSD or anxiousness. It sounds like he had some problems with the cops. And then
the kind of PTSD you would have when somebody points a gun at you.
Yeah.
On every traffic stop you've ever been involved in, that kind?
But I was sitting there thinking, like, how the hell does this cop go from a store clerk he doesn't know holding up basically what would amount to a $20
Matt, it was a high crime area.
Well, there you go. I thought he had no reason, but now he does.
Yeah, you can't. When you're a cop, you can't do things as per protocol when you're in a high crime area. That means the rules are off.
I keep forgetting that. Let me see if I can find this. I keep forgetting that some people who live in neighborhoods the police don't like have less rights.
I
keep forgetting that.
They could find that damn form.
All right, hold on a second. You guys want to try to watch the beginning of this?
Yeah,
sure.
I hope that clerk is smart enough to go out and find himself a fake $20 bill.
All right, sorry, I'm muted. Do you guys want to watch the beginning of this?
Sure, yeah.
All right, I found it on Reddit. Hang on. It's the body cam. Let me we don't have to watch the full thing, but it's worth watching just because. All right. Oh, wait a minute. Of course, that's not it. Damn it. Well, hold on. We got a problem. That's the cops pulling over a guy in a wheelchair. My bad.
No, that was the cop pulled him off of a train track.
Just before the.
So this is. All right. I guess this isn't the full thing. He already goes into the store. He literally walks in the store. The clerk holds up a bill and says, "Here it is. The guy's out there in a car." All right. So this is the cop walks out the corner and then he sees this car.
This guy's flashlight out because it's super dark. Is there sound on this?
Wow.
Is there sound on this?
Huh?
Is there sound on this?
Yeah, you can't hear.
I cannot.
No. You have to select use the sound when you do it. When you share it, you have to, on the bottom left-hand side, you have to click the share the sound video.
All right, we'll try one more time. Sorry.
That seems to be a fairly quick draw there.
He seems to open the door with the gun.
You think when he's knocking on the thing, he's already got the gun out? It's just down by his.
Looks like he's knocking on it with his left hand with a flashlight in it. Because
yeah.
Who doesn't need a flashlight in the middle of the day? Oh yeah.
Has to do that when they're in a high crime
area.
And they've got an uncorroborated tip that somebody might have passed a bogus $20 bill.
Right. This literally writes itself.
See your hands. Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Let me see your other hand.
Please, but
both hands.
do nothing.
Put your hands up right now. Let me see your other hand.
All right. What I do though? What we do?
Put your hand up there. Put your hand up there. Hands on the wheel.
They're editing out.
Hands on the wheel.
I'm sorry, brother.
Who else is in the car?
This is my
Put your foot back in.
I'm so sorry. God dang, man. Man, I got shot the same way as I was before.
Okay, well, when I say let me see your hands, you put your hands up.
I'm so sorry.
You said I got shot the same way before?
Hands on top of your head.
Last time I got shot like that was I was
Hands on top of your head. Hands on top of your head. Step out of the vehicle and step away from me, all right? Step out and face away. Step out and face away.
Please don't shoot me. Please, man.
I'm not going to shoot you. Step out and face away.
I'm going to get out of here, man. Please don't shoot me, man. Please, man. I just lost my mom, man.
Taking one out. Step out and face away. Step out and face away.
Please don't shoot me, Mr. Officer. Please don't shoot me, man.
Step out and face away.
You're not shooting me, man.
I'm not shooting. Step out and face away.
Okay. Please, man. Please. I didn't know, man.
Get out of the car.
I didn't know, Mr. Officer. I didn't know.
Right now.
Now move it. Put your hand behind your back.
There's a couple of things from a legal perspective that crack me up on this. One is like you have an uncorroborated tip of a $20 crime that you chose not to investigate, right? There was zero reason you couldn't have even looked at the damn bill. He pulls that gun out. It seems a little bit fast. He's saying, "Let me see your hands," but he's at an angle that I don't like. Is he telling, like, we do this in DUI? You got to put your hands to your side. Is this by my side? Is this by my side? Is this by my side? Like, there's a lot of ways to put.
So George Floyd is supposed to know what he can and can't see.
Exactly. He's not saying put your hands up there. And when he tells George Floyd to put his hands on the wheel, he puts his hands on the wheel. And then when he's asking about who's the other person in the car, like, how's that even relevant? What's that matter? What's your probable cause to detain that person?
Well, if it was his aunt, he would let him go. If it's a friend, he's going to arrest him. I mean, that's pivotal in the arrest decision right there.
But it cracks me up when people are talking about, like, the George Floyd thing. Like, this is a perfect example where a different training set from the initial encounter would lead to this guy still being alive. And he's clearly, I mean, you could say he's maybe hamming it up, but he seems like he's got a legitimate anxiety tied to the police.
Yeah, I don't think it's, I have a hard time saying it's a training set. And the reason that I have a hard time with that is that a giant part of this problem is that people in these neighborhoods live in fear, rightfully, of the police officers, and they act accordingly. And that's very dangerous. That's why doing things this way is the wrong way to do it.
That man had a gun 12 inches from his head.
And it sounds like he'd been shot before.
And the messed up thing is, because people want to talk about his background. Go ahead, Pat.
Was he shot? I hadn't heard that he'd been shot before.
I know he'd had some problems with the police before. And what amuses me about this is, or what is interesting about this is this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you can say, well, the cop could have done this because George Floyd was dangerous, because George Floyd had a background. How many people in that neighborhood have legitimately just been sitting in their car, minding their damn business, reading the paper, looking at the sunset, and they've had this cop using the F word point a gun at them? And it didn't go anywhere, right? Because nobody got charged because it wasn't a crime. But Officer Quickdraw over here has probably pointed that gun at so many people, and they're affected by that. And then you
seem to be comfortable to you about pulling that gun out.
What's that?
How many of
pulling that
an
gun out?
extension of his hand?
All I know is when I first got a firearm, which I wanted a Ducks Unlimited dinner, I did a lot of reading on, like, rules and stuff. And, like, there's, like, some main rules. And one of them is you don't point a gun at something you're not intending to shoot, right? So when I watched that, as soon as I saw that gun come off, I was like, gee, holy smokes.
How many of us would be able to comply with that game of Simon Says he was telling him there with a gun pointed right at your face?
No, and he's
put your hands on the wheel. Put your hands on your head. Get out of the car. Put your foot in there. Jesus.
Yeah, who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's the passenger? Right? Let me see your hands. Who's the passenger? Let me see your hands. Put them on the wheel. Who's that guy? Pull your hands behind your back. I'm not going to shoot you. I'm not going to shoot you. I don't know.
I may shoot you, but just do what I'm telling you to do anyway. Don't be afraid. I may shoot you.
Right.
Don't be afraid.
He didn't shoot him. He choked him out.
As it turns out, he didn't get shot.
Yeah, well, the cop, he was true to his word on that.
It is a crazy world that we live in.
And it all loops back to Kamala Harris, my man. I mean, it's like, you know, I don't want to see that, but how many times in Kamala Harris's prior employment as the top prosecutor in California did she look at a video like that, break it down piece by piece, and say this cop was justified?
How many? That's what I'm thinking when you know, I wasn't going to go into it, but I'm thinking to myself, the person who's a heartbeat away, and in Biden's case, maybe like a quarter of a heartbeat away from the president's seat, how many times has she looked at that and said that's probable cause?
I'll tell you what the answer to that is. And I'm going to give you a
Every time.
definitive, I'm going to give you a definitive answer with an exact number that I guarantee is true. All right. That number is every single time she saw it.
I would love to know, and this is something that I would love to know, how many cases did she or anybody she was in direct control of, how many of those cases did she voluntarily dismiss because the stop was bad?
How many cops did she see a video she didn't like and reported it back to the department? Did that woman ever see an ounce of policing she didn't trust that she complained to somebody else about? Did she ever recommend
Very, very
1983?
difficult on the candidate. You know, the Democratic National Convention is on the 17th of this month.
Who cares?
I feel like you guys aren't supporting the vice presidential candidate from half of the people.
Ray, I hate to say
1%
this.
of the people, Ray.
I have reduced my expectations of our government to 2, maybe 3 issues, which all involve killing people. I'm pretty anti-killing people. I don't want any more prosecutors in office. I don't want people who are going to bomb people in office.
You
Those
don't
are
want any
two
more prosecutors
things.
in office, even as prosecutors?
What's that?
You don't want any more prosecutors in office, even
Yeah,
as
like I'm done spending money on bombing. Have we not bombed enough people that we shouldn't have to bomb more people? Are we at that point by now?
There's got to be a couple more out there need some killing and bombing.
Yeah, but it's crazy that those 2 positions, which I don't think are irrational.
We have more bombs left. Of course, there's more to do.
But those 2 positions eliminate like every damn politician, mostly the bomb one.
guys, we're past our time. Matt, you have homework to do for our next one.
What's the homework?
You said something, and you said you'd tell me next week. So now I'm going to wait.
You asked me what kind of a court date I'm going to get on my class action
okay.
trial. I'm going to
So
set
we'll
it
find out
in
that,
Elk County. Yeah.
and then we will go on from there. Everybody stay safe, and good night, everybody.
Good night, guys. Adios.
We'll see you.
Tip.